The cargo freighter drifter's dream shuddered violently as another cascade failure rippled through her aging systems. Zara Voss gripped the pilot's controls, her knuckles white against the worn leather grips as she fought to maintain course through the swirling purple mists of the Helix Nebula. Warning lights painted the cramped cockpit in harsh reds and yellows, each one representing another system crying out for attention she couldn't give. "Come on, girl," she whispered to her ship, the same words she'd been repeating for the past 3 hours. Just a little further to the way station. The drifter's dream had been her home for 6 years, ever since she'd bought the battered Terran freighter with her discharge bonus from the Merchant Marine. She'd poured every credit she had into keeping the old girl running, but 30-year-old ships had their limits. The plasma conduits were shot, the gravity generator was held together with hope and welding compound, and the navigation computer had developed an annoying habit of suggesting increasingly creative routes through asteroid fields. A proximity alarm chimed, and Zara's heart leaped as she saw the outline of a structure emerging from the nebula's electric fog. The Kronos mining station hung in space like a metal spider, its 8 massive arms extending into the nebula to harvest exotic particles. Most importantly, it had repair facilities and a fuel depot. Kronos Station, this is cargo vessel drifter's dream requesting emergency docking. She transmitted, hoping someone was still manning the communications array. Static answered her. Zara frowned and tried again, adjusting frequencies. Still nothing. As her ship limped closer to the station, she could see why. Half the external lights were dark, and several of the mining arms hung at odd angles. Clearly non-functional, the station looked abandoned. But her fuel reserves were nearly empty, and her engine was making sounds that no engine should make. "Looks like we're doing this the hard way," she muttered, manually activating her ship's docking clamps. The drifter's dream settled into an empty berth with a groan of stressed metal. Zara ran through her post-flight checklist, though half the readings were either missing or obviously wrong. She sealed her flight suit and grabbed her toolkit, knowing she'd need to assess the damage before deciding her next move. The station's artificial gravity was still functioning, though the corridors were dimly lit by emergency power. Her boots echoed hollowly on the metal deck plating as she made her way toward what her ship's computer claimed was the main engineering section. The air smelled of ozone and something else, something organic and slightly sweet. She found the central power distribution hub without too much trouble, though the corridors were a maze of identical passages, marked with symbols in 3 different alien languages. The good news was that the station's fusion reactor was still online, just running on minimum power. The bad news was that the fuel depot's control systems were locked down tighter than a neutron star. Wonderful, she sighed, connecting her portable computer to the access panel. Time to see if those academy hacking courses were worth anything. "I wouldn't bother with the main fuel lines if I were you," a voice said behind her. Zara spun around, her hand instinctively moving to the plasma pistol on her hip. Standing in the corridor entrance was a figure that definitely wasn't human. He was tall, nearly 7 feet, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the dim light. His hair was white as starlight, pulled back in a simple tail, and his eyes were a deep violet that seemed to hold depths she couldn't fathom. Most striking were the subtle ridges along his cheekbones and the way his ears came to slight points. His clothing was practical but well-made: dark pants, a close-fitting shirt, and a long coat that looked like it cost more than her ship. "Zarati," she breathed, recognizing the species from her xenobiology classes. They were known for their longevity, their natural affinity for technology, and their tendency to avoid other species whenever possible. "Guilty as charged," he said, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. "And you're human, which makes you either very brave or very lost to be out here alone." "Both, probably," Zara admitted, though she kept her hand near her weapon. "I'm Zara Voss. My ship broke down, and I need fuel and parts. Keth Mourdain." He replied with what might have been a smile. "And I'm afraid the fuel depot has been offline for about 6 months. The station's automated systems locked down when the mining operation was abandoned." Zara felt her heart sink. "Then I'm stranded." "Not necessarily." Keth moved closer, his movements fluid and precise. "The fuel pumps are dead, but there are still sealed containers in the storage bay. Manual extraction is possible, though it's not exactly standard procedure. You seem to know a lot about this station for someone who just happened to be passing through. Keth's violet eyes glinted with amusement. Who says I was passing through? I've been here for 3 days, waiting for a parts shipment that's apparently not coming. My ship is berthed on the other side of the station. What kind of parts? Zara asked, professional curiosity overriding her caution. Quantum flux regulators. For my hyperdrive. Very specialized, very expensive, and apparently very difficult to obtain in this sector. Zara blinked. You're kidding. I've got a full set of Mark 7 regulators in my cargo hold. They're surplus from a merchant marine retrofit. Mark 7? Keth's expression shifted to something approaching excitement. Those are better than what I was trying to replace. What do you want for them? Help me get my ship repaired and fueled, and they're yours. Keth extended a hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Zara shook it. His skin was warm, warmer than she'd expected, and there was something about the way he looked at her that made her pulse quicken. Partnership it is, he said, though I should warn you. Working with me tends to complicate things. I'm used to complications. We'll see about that. They spent the next several hours working together to access the station's fuel reserves. Keth proved to be surprisingly knowledgeable about human technology, and Zara found herself impressed by his quick thinking and steady hands. He worked with the confidence of someone who'd spent years dealing with improvised solutions and emergency repairs. You're not just a casual traveler, are you? She asked as they maneuvered a heavy fuel container through the station's corridors. Is anyone, really? Keth replied, deflecting the question with practiced ease. We're all running from something or toward something. The space between is just details. That's very philosophical for someone who carries a military-grade plasma rifle. He glanced at the weapons slung across his back. The galaxy is a dangerous place, especially for those who value their independence. They reached her ship as the station's artificial day cycle was ending, the corridor lights dimming to simulate evening. Zara's diagnostic equipment confirmed what she'd suspected. Her ship needed more than just fuel. The plasma conduits were shot. The gravity generator was failing, and her navigation computer was displaying what she was fairly certain was poetry in an alien language. It's going to take at least 2 days to get her space-worthy, she said, running her hands through her short brown hair in frustration. I might have a solution. Keth said carefully, my ship has guest quarters and a full workshop. You could complete the repairs there, in comfort. Zara studied his face, looking for hidden motives. And why would you offer that? Because I need those flux regulators, and because, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, because I haven't had interesting conversation in months, and you're the first person I've met who didn't immediately try to shoot me or run away. The day is young, Zara said, but she was smiling. All right, Keth Mourdain, show me this ship of yours. As they walked through the station's winding corridors toward the other docking bay, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to step into something far more complex than a simple trade agreement. There was something about Keth, the way he moved, the way he spoke, the way he seemed to know exactly what she was thinking that suggested depths she hadn't even begun to explore. The massive blast doors to docking bay 7 cycled open, revealing a sleek vessel that made Zara's breath catch. The ship was beautiful in the way that only cutting-edge technology could be. All smooth curves and gleaming hull plating. It was easily 3 times the size of her freighter, and probably worth more than she'd make in a lifetime of cargo runs. Welcome to the Void Whisper, Keth said, noting her expression. She's been my home for the better part of a decade. This is your ship? Zara asked, suddenly understanding why he'd been so casual about the expensive parts. What exactly do you do for a living? Keth's smile was enigmatic. I transport things that need to be transported. Discreetly. A smuggler, then. Zara should have been concerned. Should have made her excuses and returned to her own ship instead. She found herself intrigued. There was something about Keth Mourdain that drew her in. Something that made her want to know more about the mysterious Serati and his beautiful ship. This galaxy is ours tonight, he said softly, gesturing toward the viewport where stars glittered like scattered diamonds against the nebulous purple backdrop. The question is, what do we do with it? As Zara followed him aboard the Void Whisper, she couldn't help but feel that whatever happened next, the Void Whisper was even more impressive from the inside. Zara followed Keth through corridors lined with smooth, dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship's architecture was distinctly non-human, with flowing curves and organic shapes that made her feel like she was walking through the belly of some graceful space creature rather than a mechanical vessel. "Your quarters are here," Keth said, stopping at a door that dilated open at his approach. "The workshop is 2 levels down, accessible through the lift at the end of this corridor. Food synthesizer, hygiene facilities, and entertainment system are all standard human compatible." Zara stepped inside and couldn't suppress a small gasp. The room was larger than her entire living space on the Drifter's Dream, with a bed that looked like it could accommodate 3 people, a sitting area with chairs that seemed to mold themselves to her body as she approached, and a viewport that offered a spectacular view of the nebula swirling around them. "This is incredible," she said, running her hand along the smooth surface of a table that seemed to be carved from a single piece of some dark, lustrous stone. "I've never seen anything like it." "Zarati craftsmanship," Keth explained, leaning against the doorframe. "We believe our living spaces should be as beautiful as they are functional. The materials are from my homeworld. That table is carved from deep cave mineral formations that take centuries to grow." "Your homeworld." Zara turned to face him, curiosity overriding her usual caution. "I thought Zarati were nomadic." "Most are now." Something flickered across his expression, pain, perhaps, or loss. "Zirith fell to the hegemony expansion nearly 2 decades ago. Those of us who survived learned to make our homes among the stars." The weight of that revelation settled between them. Zara had heard rumors about the hegemony's aggressive expansion into the outer systems, but she'd never met someone who'd actually lost their homeworld to it. "I'm sorry," she said, meaning it. "I didn't know." "How could you? The hegemony is very good at making conquered worlds disappear from the star charts." Keth straightened, clearly uncomfortable with the sympathy. "Dinner is in an hour. If you'd like to join me, the galley has one of the best food synthesizers in the sector." After he left, Zara explored her temporary quarters more thoroughly. The hygiene facilities were luxurious beyond anything she'd experienced, with a shower that seemed to use some form of sonic cleansing rather than water. The entertainment system offered access to cultural databases from dozens of species, and the bed was so comfortable she had to resist the urge to take a nap. She settled for changing into her spare clothes, clean but well-worn cargo pants, and a simple shirt that suddenly felt shabby in these elegant surroundings. When she made her way to the galley, she found Keth already there, moving around the space with the easy familiarity of someone who'd spent years perfecting his domestic routines. "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of programming something special," he said, gesturing to the synthesizer. "Zarati cuisine doesn't always translate well to human palates, but I've had time to experiment." The meal that emerged was unlike anything Zara had ever tasted. The flavors were complex and layered, with subtle spices that seemed to change on her tongue as she ate. There were textures she couldn't identify, colors that shouldn't exist in food, and an overall harmony that made her understand why Zarati were known for their aesthetic sensible. "This is amazing," she said, taking another bite of something that tasted like starlight and felt like silk. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" "Necessity," Keth replied, pouring them both glasses of something that sparkled like liquid diamonds. "When you spend months alone in deep space, you either learn to make eating interesting or you go mad from the monotony." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the nebula's purple glow shifting and dancing outside the galley's large viewport. Zara found herself studying Keth's face in the ethereal light, noting the way the colors brought out the subtle ridges along his cheekbones and made his violet eyes seem to glow. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Of course." "What do you really do? I mean, I know you said you transport things discreetly, but..." She gestured around the luxurious galley. "This isn't exactly a typical smuggler's setup." Keth's smile was rueful. "You're very perceptive. Most people see what they expect to see." He leaned back in his chair, considering his words. I suppose you could call me a liberator of sorts. I retrieve things that have been taken from their rightful owners, return artifacts to their original cultures, occasionally extract people from situations they'd rather not be in. A thief with a conscience, something like that. His expression grew more serious. The galaxy is full of powerful people who take what they want and assume their wealth or position. Gives them the right, redistribute things, even the scales. Zara found herself nodding. She'd seen enough of the galaxy's inequalities during her time in the Merchant Marine to understand the appeal of such work. That's why you need the discretion and the speed. Exactly. Though I should warn you, it's not always a popular occupation. I've made more than a few enemies over the years. Is that why you were really at the station? Running from someone? Keth's laugh was low and musical. Always the direct questions. Yes, partly. I recently liberated a rather valuable collection of Andromedan art crystals from a hegemony collector who'd acquired them through less than ethical means. The original owners were quite grateful, but the collector was less so. So you're a wanted man. Aren't we all, in one way or another? He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers as he refilled her glass. The contact sent an unexpected jolt of warmth up her arm. What about you, Zara Voss? What are you running from? The question caught her off guard. She'd been so focused on learning about him that she hadn't expected the conversation to turn back to her. I'm not running from anything. I'm just existing, making my way. Independent cargo hauler is a lonely profession, Keth observed. Most people who choose it are either running from something or searching for something they can't name. Zara took a sip of the sparkling drink, using the moment to consider her answer. Maybe I'm searching, then. I spent 5 years in the Merchant Marine, following orders, going where they told me to go. When I got out, I wanted to see the galaxy on my own terms. And have you seen it on your own terms, some of it? She looked out at the nebula, its swirling colors hypnotic in the artificial twilight. There's so much out there, so many worlds, so many species, so many possibilities. Sometimes I think a lifetime wouldn't be enough to see it all. Zarati lived for approximately 300 of your years, Keth said quietly. I'm barely into my 2nd century, and I've seen maybe 1,000th of what's out there. The galaxy is vast beyond comprehension. That's both terrifying and wonderful. Yes, he agreed. It is. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing from philosophy to technology to personal stories. Keth told her about worlds he'd visited, artifacts he'd recovered, people he'd helped. Zara shared stories from her Merchant Marine days, the strange ports she'd visited, the odd characters she'd met along the way. As the evening progressed, Zara became increasingly aware of the attraction building between them. The way Keth looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, the way his voice grew softer when he spoke about beautiful things, the way her skin seemed to tingle whenever he moved close enough for her to catch his scent, something clean and slightly exotic, like ozone and night-blooming flowers. I should probably get some sleep, she said finally, though she was reluctant to end the evening. Tomorrow I need to start working on my ship. Of course. Keth stood as she did, moving with that fluid grace she was beginning to associate with him. The workshop is fully equipped. If you need anything, just ask the ship's computer. They walked together through the corridors toward her quarters, the ship's lighting having dimmed to simulate nighttime. At her door, they paused, and Zara found herself standing closer to him than she'd intended. Thank you, she said, for the dinner, for the conversation, for all of this. Thank you for making the evening interesting, he replied. It's been a long time since I've had such engaging company. For a moment, they stood there in the dim corridor, and Zara felt the pull of possibility. It would be so easy to invite him in, to see where this attraction might lead. But something held her back, caution, perhaps, or simply the knowledge that she barely knew this man despite the connection she felt. Good night, Keth, she said, stepping toward her door. Good night, Zara. As the door closed behind her, Zara leaned against it, her heart racing. She'd traveled the galaxy for 6 years, met countless people, but she'd never felt anything quite like this. There was something about Keth Mourdain that called to her, something that made her want to throw caution to the stellar winds and see what might happen. Outside her viewport, the nebula continued its eternal dance, and somewhere in its depths, she could feel the weight of infinite possibilities stretching out before her. Like an uncharted star map, the next morning, Zara made her way to the workshop, her toolkit slung over her shoulder. What she found there made her stop in her tracks. The space was enormous, filled with equipment that looked like it belonged in a major shipyard rather than a private vessel. Fabrication units, molecular assemblers, diagnostic equipment that could analyze technology from a dozen different species. It was an engineer's dream. Impressive, isn't it? Keth's voice came from behind her. I've spent years collecting the best equipment I could find or steal. This is incredible, Zara breathed, moving toward a fabrication unit that could probably manufacture replacement parts for her entire ship. I could build a new freighter with this equipment. Feel free to use whatever you need. I have some business to attend to, but I'll check on you later. Zara spent the morning diving into the repairs her ship needed, but found herself distracted by thoughts of her enigmatic host. The more she learned about Keth, the more questions she had. His ship was worth millions, his equipment was cutting edge, and his casual mention of liberating valuable artifacts suggested he was far more than a simple smuggler. She was deep in the process of rebuilding her ship's plasma conduits when she heard footsteps on the workshop's metal decking. She looked up to find Keth approaching with 2 cups of something that smelled like coffee, but looked like liquid starlight. How's the work progressing? He asked, handing her one of the cups. Better than expected. This equipment is amazing. She took a sip and was surprised by the complex flavor. Definitely not coffee, but something that gave her the same energizing effect. What is this? Zerati stimulant. It's made from the nectar of night-blooming flowers that only grow in high radiation environments. Very effective for maintaining focus during long projects. You seem to have a lot of Zerati things for someone whose homeworld was destroyed. Keth's expression grew thoughtful. I salvaged what I could before the evacuation. Cultural artifacts, seeds, genetic samples, databases. When your entire civilization is scattered to the stars, preserving what you can becomes vital. Is that why you do what you do? Preserve things? Partly. He moved closer, watching her work with the delicate plasma conduits, but also because the galaxy is full of bullies who think might makes right. Sometimes someone needs to remind them that they're wrong. Zara could hear the conviction in his voice, and she found herself admiring his principles even as she wondered about the dangers they must bring. Don't you ever get tired of it? The running, the fighting, the constant looking over your shoulder every day, he admitted. But then I think about the art crystals finding their way back to the Andromedan temples, or the refugees I helped escape hegemony occupation zones, or the cultural databases I've preserved from extinct civilizations. It makes the loneliness worth it. Loneliness, this life doesn't leave much room for connections. Most people I meet are either employers or enemies, sometimes both. Zara set down her tools and turned to face him fully. What am I, then? Keth's violet eyes met hers, and she saw something vulnerable there, something that made her breath catch. I'm not sure yet, but I hope you're something new. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Zara could feel the pull of attraction, stronger now than it had been the night before. There was something about Keth that drew her in despite all the rational reasons she should be cautious. The nebula is beautiful from here, she said, gesturing toward the workshop's large viewport where purple and silver mists swirled in hypnotic patterns. Yes, Keth agreed, though he was looking at her rather than the view. Beautiful. As the ship's artificial day cycle continued, Zara found herself working alongside Keth more than she was working alone. He proved to be an excellent assistant, anticipating what she needed and offering insights that came from years of maintaining his own sophisticated vessel. More than that, his presence made the work enjoyable in a way that solo repairs never were. Hand me that quantum spanner, she said, reaching blindly while keeping her eyes on the delicate work she was doing inside her ship's main power coupling. Instead of the tool, she felt Keth's hand touch hers, warm and gentle. This one? He asked, his voice closer than she'd expected. Zara looked up to find him leaning over her, close enough that she could see the intricate patterns of color in his violet eyes. For a moment, neither of them moved, the air between them electric. With possibility. Yes, she whispered, that one. But neither of them reached for the tool. Instead, Keth's free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek with a tenderness that made her heart race. Zara, he said softly, her name like music in his accent. I should tell you something. What? I haven't felt this way about anyone in a very long time, and given my lifestyle, that's probably not fair to you. Why don't you let me decide what's fair? She replied, leaning into his touch. Because you deserve better than someone who's always running, always looking over his shoulder, always one step ahead of people who'd rather see him dead. Maybe, Zara said, reaching up to trace the ridge along his cheekbone with her fingertip. Or maybe I deserve someone who makes me feel like the galaxy is full of possibilities, instead of just problems. And do I make you feel that way, instead of answering with words? Zara closed the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as years of loneliness and careful distance melted away. Keth's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Zara felt something inside her chest crack open like a flower blooming in starlight. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. The workshop around them seemed to have faded away, leaving only the two of them and the swirling nebula beyond the viewport. This changes things, Keth said, his forehead resting against hers. Yes, Zara agreed. It does. I should warn you, my life is complicated, dangerous. There are people who would hurt you just to get to me. I can handle complicated and dangerous. Well, that's what makes life interesting. Keth's laugh was warm and genuine. You're remarkable. Zara Voss, I just hope I don't ruin this. You won't, she said with more confidence than she felt. We won't let you. As they returned to their work, something fundamental had shifted between them. The attraction that had been simmering beneath the surface was now acknowledged, electric and alive. Every accidental touch, every shared glance, every moment of working in harmony together only intensified the connection growing between them. Outside the viewport, the nebula continued its eternal dance, and Zara couldn't help but think that she was beginning to understand what Keth had meant when he'd said the galaxy was theirs tonight. For the first time in years, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 2 days later, the drifter's dream was running better than she had in months. Zara had taken advantage of Keth's sophisticated workshop to not only repair the immediate problems, but upgrade several systems that had been limping along on hope and determination. As she ran the final diagnostics, she felt a strange mix of satisfaction and reluctance. Her ship was ready, which meant her time aboard the Void Whisper was coming to an end. Everything looks good, she announced as Keth entered the workshop. She's ready for whatever the galaxy throws at her. Excellent work, he said, though his tone suggested the same reluctance she felt. The quantum flux regulators are installed and calibrated. My hyperdrive is running more smoothly than it has in years. They stood there for a moment, the weight of unspoken questions hanging between them over the past 2 days. Their connection had deepened beyond the initial attraction. Working together, sharing meals, talking late into the ship's night cycle, it had all felt natural, right in a way that Zara hadn't experienced before. So, she said finally, I suppose this is where we part ways. It doesn't have to be, Keth said quietly. I mean, technically, yes, our business arrangement is complete. But he moved closer, his violet eyes serious. There's something I'd like to show you. Somewhere I'd like to take you. If you're willing. Where? My base of operations. It's not far from here, and it's special. I think you'd appreciate it. Zara studied his face, reading the invitation for what it really was. Are you asking me to come with you? I'm asking if you'd like to see more of what's out there, together. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. I know it's presumptuous, given that we've only known each other for a few days, but yes. Zara interrupted. I'd like that. The relief on Keth's face was unmistakable. Really, really. Though I should warn you, my ship isn't built for speed. You'll have to adjust your pace for a lowly cargo hauler. I think I can manage that. 3 hours later, both ships were underway, flying in formation through the swirling mists of the Helix Nebula. Zara had to admit that seeing her patched-up freighter Keeping pace with Keth's sleek smuggling vessel was oddly satisfying. They maintained constant communication as they flew, Keth's voice a warm presence on her calm system as he guided her through navigation hazards and shared stories about the regions they passed through. There, he said as they cleared a particularly dense patch of nebular gas, dead ahead, about 10,000 kilometers. Zara squinted at her forward display and gasped. What she'd initially taken for a large asteroid revealed itself to be something far more interesting as they approached. The irregular rock surface was riddled with tunnels and chambers, clearly artificial, with atmospheric barriers glowing like soap bubbles across various openings. Docking bays were carved into the stone, and she could see the gleam of technology integrated seamlessly with the natural rock formations. "Welcome to Heaven's Rest," Keth announced as they approached one of the larger docking bays. "Home sweet." "Home, this is incredible," Zara breathed as her ship settled onto the docking cradle. "How long have you been building this?" "About 15 years, on and off. It started as just a hidden fuel depot, but it's grown considerably since then." The docking bay was pressurized and climate-controlled, with gravitic generators providing standard gravity. As Zara emerged from her ship, she could see that the space was both functional and beautiful, with natural rock formations left intact where possible and technology integrated so seamlessly. It seemed to grow from the stone itself. Keth was waiting for her, having docked his own ship in an adjacent bay. "What do you think? It's amazing." "How did you find this place?" "I didn't find it, I made it. This asteroid has a unique mineral composition that makes it nearly invisible to most sensors, perfect for someone who values privacy." He led her through a series of chambers and corridors that managed to feel both spacious and intimate. Living areas were carved into natural alcoves, while workshops and storage areas took advantage of the asteroid's irregular shape. Everywhere she looked, Zara saw evidence of Keth's aesthetic sensibility, the same flowing lines and organic curves she'd admired on his ship, adapted to work with the natural rock formations. "The main living area is this way," he said, guiding her through a tunnel that opened into a vast cavern. Zara stopped in her tracks, overwhelmed by what she saw. The chamber was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. But what took her breath away was the viewport, a massive transparent aluminum window that offered an unobstructed view of the nebula beyond. The purple and silver mist swirled in slow motion, backlit by distant stars, creating a display more beautiful than any artwork she'd ever seen. "This is," she began, then stopped, unable to find words adequate to the sight. "The reason I chose this place," Keth finished. "I've traveled the galaxy for decades, seen wonders on 1,000 worlds, but this view never gets old." The living space itself was arranged around the viewport, with comfortable seating areas, a kitchen that rivaled the one on his ship, and what appeared to be a library with texts and data crystals from dozens of different civilizations. Everything was designed to take advantage of the view while providing comfortable spaces for reading, working, or simply contemplating the cosmos. "Keth, this is extraordinary. You build all this yourself?" "Mostly. I've had help occasionally, refugees. I've transported artists whose work I've recovered, people who needed a safe place for a while." He moved to stand beside her at the great window. "It's been my sanctuary, but it's also been lonely." Zara turned to look at him, seeing vulnerability in his expression that he usually kept hidden. "Is that why you brought me here? Because you're lonely?" "Partly," he admitted, "but also because." He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "Because in 3 days, you've made me remember what it feels like to share things with someone, to have a companion instead of just a destination." The honesty in his voice made her chest tight. "Keth, I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other, but there's something between us. Isn't there? Something worth exploring?" Instead of answering immediately, Zara walked to one of the seating areas, a curved couch that faced the viewport. She settled into the incredibly comfortable cushions and patted the space beside her. "Tell me about this place. Really tell me. How did you build it? What's it for?" Keth joined her on the couch, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "It started as necessity. I needed a base of operations, somewhere I could plan jobs, store recovered artifacts, maintain my ship, But as it grew, it became something more. A repository, I suppose. Repository? Come here, I'll show you. He led her to another section of the complex, through passages lined with alcoves containing objects that made Zara's breath catch. Art from a dozen different species. Technological artifacts that hummed with barely contained energy, data crystals, that glowed with soft internal light. These are all things I've recovered, Keth explained. Cultural artifacts stolen by collectors, technology taken from conquered worlds, historical records that powerful people would prefer to see destroyed. I return what I can to their original owners, but some civilizations no longer exist to claim them. Zara stopped in front of a display case containing what looked like a flower made of living crystal, its faceted petals shifting through a spectrum of colors she didn't have names for. This is beautiful. What is it? A remembrance bloom from Zerath. They were living crystals that grew in our sacred groves, each one unique. When someone died, their family would plant one in their memory. This is all that remains of the grove, of ancestors. The pain in his voice was unmistakable. Zara reached out, taking his hand in both of hers. You saved it. I saved a few things, not enough. He squeezed her hands gently. The hegemony strip mines conquered worlds for useful materials. They don't care about preserving cultures or histories. If people like me don't save what we can, it all disappears. People like you, thieves, smugglers, people who operate in the spaces between laws and empires. His smile was rueful. Not exactly the sort of person a nice cargo hauler should get involved with. Zara studied his face, seeing the self-doubt he tried to hide behind humor. What makes you think I'm nice? Well, you haven't tried to rob me, or turn me in for the bounty on my head. There's a bounty on your head. Several, actually. The hegemony has me listed as a terrorist. The Regelian Syndicate calls me a pirate. A dozen private collectors have put prices on my capture. He shrugged as if discussing the weather. Occupational hazard. And you're telling me this because? Because if you're going to be around me, you should know what you're getting into. I'm not just a simple smuggler, Zara. I'm actively working against some very powerful, very dangerous people. That makes me dangerous to be around. Zara was quiet for a long moment, considering everything she'd learned. The smart thing would be to thank him for the hospitality, take her repaired ship, and head back to the safety of regular cargo runs. But as she looked around at the artifacts he'd saved, at the beauty he'd created in this hidden place, she realized that smart wasn't what she wanted anymore. Show me more, she said finally. More what? All of it. Your work, your collection, your life. If I'm going to understand what I'm getting into, I want to see everything. The relief and hope that crossed Keth's features was worth every risk she was contemplating. They spent the next several hours exploring the complex. Keth showed her workshops where he restored damaged artifacts, laboratories where he analyzed alien technologies, and secure vaults where he stored items too dangerous or valuable to display. Each room told the story of a man who had dedicated his life to preserving beauty and fighting injustice, even at great personal cost. This is where I plan operations, he said, leading her into a chamber filled with holographic displays showing star charts, shipping routes, and intelligence reports. Most of my work comes through a network of contacts: museum curators, political refugees, academics who've had their research stolen. I find out where something shouldn't be, figure out how to get it back, and return it to where it belongs. Sounds like you're fighting a one-man war against half the galaxy. Someone has to. The legitimate authorities are either bought off or too intimidated to act. When the powerful take what they want, who speaks for the powerless? Zara studied the intelligence displays, recognizing some of the names and organizations. The scope of Keth's operation was staggering. He was tracking corruption and theft across multiple star systems, coordinating with resistance movements and cultural preservation groups, essentially running a one-man campaign to protect galactic heritage. You could get killed doing this, she observed. Probably will, eventually, but at least I'll have made a difference. Don't you want more than that? A family, a home, a normal life. Keth's laugh was bitter. Normal lives are for people whose worlds haven't been destroyed, whose cultures haven't been erased. This is my normal now. It doesn't have to be. He turned to look at her, something desperate in his violet eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe you don't have to fight this war alone anymore. Zara moved closer, reaching up to touch his face. Maybe there's room in this life for something besides duty and sacrifice. Zara. His voice was rough with emotion. You don't know what you're offering. Then tell me. Make me understand, instead of words. Keth pulled her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was desperate and hungry and full of longing. Zara responded instinctively, her arms wrapping around his neck as she pressed herself against him. This kiss was different from their first, less tentative, more intense, charged with the weight of everything they'd shared and everything they were risking. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Keth rested his forehead against hers, his hands still tangled in her hair. If you stay, he said quietly, there will be danger. People trying to kill us. Constant running, never knowing if today is the day our luck runs out. And if I go, you'll be safe. You can go back to your cargo runs. Find someone stable and uncomplicated. Live a normal life. Zara considered this, looking around at the beautiful, impossible place he'd created, at the man who had shown her wonders she'd never imagined. What if I don't want normal anymore? What if I want adventure and danger and the chance to make a difference? What if I want you? She added, so quietly it was barely a whisper. Keth's smile was radiant. Then this galaxy is definitely ours tonight. And tomorrow we'll figure out together. As they stood there in each other's arms, surrounded by the treasures Keth had spent years preserving, with the nebula swirling in cosmic slow motion beyond the great viewport, Zara felt something fundamental shift in her understanding of what her life could be. She'd spent 6 years drifting through the galaxy alone, thinking she was free. But now she realized that true freedom wasn't about being alone, it was about choosing who to share the adventure with. So, she said, pulling back to look into his eyes, what's our next job? Keth's grin was pure mischief. There's a hegemony collector on Rigel Prime who recently acquired some Andromedan memory crystals that belong in a temple on New Atlantis, interested in a little cosmic justice. With you, I'm interested in everything. As they began planning their first mission together, the asteroid base humming quietly round them, and the infinite cosmos spread out beyond the viewport, Zara couldn't help but think that this was what she'd been searching for all along. Not just adventure, but purpose, not just freedom, but someone worth being free with. The galaxy was vast and dangerous and full of wonders, and now she wouldn't have to explore it alone.